Committee on Public Safety to order. Please let the record reflect that all committee members are present. Could I have a motion for the May 27th, 2025 minutes?
So moved.
All right, proper motion's been made. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Any public comment today? Do you have some folks in the room? Public, would you like to make a statement for public comment?
I just need your name for the record.
Andy Markovich. Step on up.
Just kind of update you guys about the bowling alley demolition. We submitted for the Friday for the application to be licensed through the city of Lansing, which I just spoke with Tracy. So she submitted it. You guys, planning department and all the needed departments should have their information here soon so they can get their approvals and then move forward on. And then from there, I can get the demolition. We have done we're in the process.
Right? You get the demo permit that we.
Yeah, so we can get the demo permit.
If his contractor gets licensed.
Yes.
Legally able to apply for the permit.
Now, if there was a failure in our part of it, I have spoke with Brian over at Michigan Demolition as a backup plan, so we can stay on top of it. So Brian's been over there, he knows the whole thing, so, and he's willing to work with me, so that's great. The other thing is we got the asbestos going, trying to remember everything here. We started that last week for removal, and I believe they're gonna be done with it by the end of this week. So hopefully everything will work in plan. We'll get our demo license in place, get our permit. And then from there, we get to submit it to the state for our 2 weeks notice and bada bing, bada boom. Get her knocked down.
Well, thank you for your update.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Best I can do, so.
Thanks for making us aware.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate you having me.
Okay, moving on to number 5, discussion and action items. Item B, ordinance amending chapter 1060, section 1060.08 to authorize the code official to abate nuisances. This item did go before the full council yesterday, correct? Yes, so referred back to this committee. Any discussion or questions on this? I feel like it was fairly straightforward. Okay. Do we have a motion?
I would move.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion passes. These next several items, we have our discussion items, and we'll move on to C, the zoning code, 1250.0208, and the Michigan Public Health Code. This is a continuation of a discussion that we had, I believe it was May 13th. We had a resident constituent who was pursuing using their recreational vehicle on their own property while their home was having some work done to it. They were told this was not possible. And so we addressed that through committee, started asking some questions, and there was some further follow-up that was asked of. So if there's, would you like to speak to what we have here?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. So I think where we left off is this committee was interested in exploring whether other municipalities allowed for individuals to occupy an RV in a residentially zoned area. We looked at zoning ordinances focused mostly on communities similar in size and density to Lansing. Specifically, we looked at Grand Rapids, Sterling Heights, Ann Arbor, Detroit, Macomb Township, Farmington Hills, Kalamazoo, Southfield, Rochester Hills, Royal Oak, Traverse City, and the city of Saginaw. All prohibit the living in an RV on a residentially zoned area. Many, just like Lansing, talk about parking the RVs and things like that. I think there was some public comment at previous meetings that Saginaw does allow this. And I did provide in response to an email, and I believe it is in your packet, kind of an FAQ sheet that I took directly from the city of Saginaw, which is clear that it is prohibited. And mainly it's prohibited from what I can tell, consistent with the reason that we've given here is that in order to live.
I know it's not anything formal in terms of an ordinance draft, but I would have heavy concerns if council decided to take that approach. RVs or vehicles of such nature are probably one of the top 5 complaints we get in general in the community already. And so I'm not certain that the community is at a point where they would welcome these to be used then as also living dwellings when we already have an issue with proper maintenance and storage of them on parcels across the city, to laws concerns as well. That is ultimately would be building safeties concerns, which is the permanency hookup. Those are added costs. I'm not certain that if that passed, that folks interested in this would even be able to do that feasibly. It certainly would be a huge monetary risk on their end. I encourage, if this is a matter we want to investigate further, the city of Lansing currently doesn't have it zoned as campground. Commonly, folks think Cottonwood is in the city. It's technically the township. That would be the closest campground where this type of activity would be permitted. Certainly encourage anybody now experiencing troubles and wanting to use a recreational vehicle as a temporary means of home while they fix up their permanent residencies, that's an area we would point them to. Otherwise, I would encourage then, the administration, perhaps a partnership with council, to try and then identify a parcel in the city that could be maybe rezoned as campground, allow for the proper hookups and this type of living environment to exist. Lastly, I'll say, the only other comment I heard in discussion was perhaps other cities, or the one allows for temporary or 30 days. Again, even if we went down that road, I caution folks who don't comply with that. I would assume that's going to be similar to our other zoning issues, where if you're not accustomed to that, it is a lengthy compliance process on our end. In many cases, we'll find ourselves in court. And so I'd hate to see something of this magnitude have to go that route and compliance be even more difficult for the administration to achieve.
Okay, thank you. Lisa, you had additional comment?
I did, thank you. I inadvertently left off kind of the other portion of my email, and I do want to make sure that it's accurately summarized here. There is one community that I was able to locate that does allow, in a very limited scope and situation, the occupying and living in an RV. That's Owasso. So it's kind of well outside of the similarly populated areas such as Lansing, but for the sake of accuracy and completeness, I do want to bring that to the entire committee's attention. Owasso does allow for occupancies of RVs on residential properties. The ordinance requires a permit be issued for such occupancy. It has to be the owner or the owner's family member. And the inspection must take place within 24 hours of the RV first being located on the premises. And it's limited to a time period of a maximum of 30 days. So it's very limited. And as Raleigh said, kind of, was not sure whether that was feasible for a city with the size and the density that Lansing has.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from committee members?
Just that I appreciate your diligence. Yeah, absolutely. And I thought there, in terms of public comment, certainly appreciate it, but I thought there were some mistakes conveyed, or I should say some misunderstandings. And I appreciate you verifying some of that with this particularly with this FAQ from Saginaw.
Yeah, thank you. And for thoroughly going down this road with this committee on this topic. I appreciate the time and attention that was put in here. All right, are we ready to move on? All right. Moving on to discussion item 5D, the parking ordinance enforcement on unregistered vehicles. And I'm sorry, I did not say this previously. The residents that were interested and involved with the previous discussion regarding the RV, as well as this particular item, were interested in coming, ultimately unable to attend today's meeting, but they are aware that these items are being discussed today. Okay, so we have in our packets a copy of the ordinance number 1329, which addresses the parking prohibitions, the unregistered motor vehicle on any roadway, public roadway, including but not limited to alley, street, or highway, and the violations portion. The penalties are established in section 404.0 Any input from law or from EDP on this particular instance?
So, yeah, so the email that came our way, and I think precipitated landing on the agenda,
Correct.
basically somebody had received, did you see?
Do you have a
Okay,
copy?
somebody had received,
The one today.
I took, yes, Laura Wall.
History's
It basically took issue with how she was supposed to remedy, or I should say, prove to the parking division that she in fact had registration. She made the argument that a valid vehicle registration or proof of registration should suffice. And that she shouldn't necessarily have to go through the process of a replacement tab and all those things. So we just promised her that we take it up in committee and find out, I think, number one, what is the policy attached to this ordinance to prove? And then, make sure we get an understanding as to why, if it is as.
Yeah, absolutely. And I apologize because I missed you on my reply last week.
That's okay.
Direct inquiry from Councilmember Cos, the chairwoman, and also Councilmember Spadafore, all separate on it, which is, it leads me to believe that perhaps a constituent emailed every member of council, which is fine. I did share a summary of what the parking team, when I asked about this. And so just a couple clarify, I'll get to your point, Councilmember was saying in general of the ordinance, but just in case you did not see it. So we did issue a citation on May 28th at 10:38 a.m. We take a picture almost always, if not always, of every citation we do. In many cases, the vehicle in which the officer is in does that. That license plate recognition software is capturing the plate and signaling to them on their screen if there's a citation, whether that's an expired meter or in this case, perhaps an expired tag. So we take a picture of the plate. It sounds like Councilman Cost is probably showing it to you. That shows the tab clearly June 20 of 24.
Yeah, right.
So that's on our end, it was a textbook, your tab. Now to the constituents' comment in her email, as also I think the general question you're asking is yes, it could be the case that you've got the registration that's valid in your glove box, but maybe you never put the tab on, the tab was taken off, whatever the reason, the tab's just not there. Yes, absolutely. If the vehicle owner can contact parking services, show the copy of that valid registration, in lieu of the actual tab, we would waive the citation, no problem. We did check though, it sounds like the day that this violation was issued, the vehicle owner that same day actually went to the Secretary of State to re-register. And so since they're not here, I'm trying not to put them too much on the spot without an opportunity to reply, but it sounds like my take of the original inquiry is some significant details of our enforcement was left out on their part.
Okay.
But in general, yes, if somebody gets the unregistered vehicle citation from parking services, but they believe that their registration is actually valid, absolutely. In that compliance timeline of the citation, if they show parking services proof, we'll waive that citation.
And if I may, it looks like perhaps from the email that we got on this situation that the vehicle was just done, just registered. So it wasn't actually registered because there's a $227 fee on there. So likely was bad tabs. I think in general, this is the ordinance that we just changed and this is a good ordinance. And I think that the conversation Raleigh and I had about this situation was the warning from the city would be much cheaper than getting pulled over on the road by a police officer having expired tabs on your vehicle. And I would also just put on the record that, if your tab needs to be replaced, the Secretary of State, I think it's $5. So it's reasonable. It's certainly better than meeting a police officer with expired plates.
Right, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe you can get tags through a kiosk as well these
Correct.
days. You can go to Kroger's and various locations.
You can order it
The
online
community.
and have a piece of paper that shows that you're.
And to be clear, I don't make a practice of every time an email comes in asking for it to be on an agenda. The reason why I asked is because this is relatively new. And I wanted to see, I thought, you know what, why not have a conversation in terms of what the internal process is to actually enforce this particular ordinance? Because this probably won't be the last time we get a question of this, right? So I appreciate the clarity. Thank you.
Sounds great. Moving on to item 6, discussion item 6E, the make safe or demolish and Ingham County tax foreclosures. So this was brought forward. There was initially the conversation came up, through the Ingham County Treasurer, Alan Fox. I know he was not able to be here today. I thought perhaps he would have some of his staff attend in his absence, but they are not present as well. So I'll do my best to represent what was relayed to me. On an annual basis, in the opinion of our Ingham County Treasurer's Office, there may be one or two properties fully gone through and been fully vetted by the city. And so essentially, there could be one or two properties each year that are ultimately demolished by the city, where the city is not able to recoup any sort of reimbursement from the county through that process. Whereas otherwise, if some of these timelines did line up better or an action were taken either through this committee or through council for these specific types of properties in this specific instance, where essentially a property could potentially be saved by the county as opposed to the previous owner or be demolished by the city. I hope that made sense. I believe this isn't a topic that's come up previously. I'm bringing it forward today. I have had a conversation with Law previously as well as Raleigh. So Lisa, if you'd like to weigh in with your comments and your take on these situations.
Sure. So I think the question as it was presented to Law is, what is the option if there is a property that has gone through the city's make safe or demolish, and it is, had a final order to make safe or demolish, and then the county forecloses and the county says, actually, we don't think this needs to be demolished. Is there something this committee or the council can do? The answer is yes. The city council always has the right to rescind. It would require legislative action by the council. I think when we had our conversation with you, Councilmember Pelevanoglu, we suggested that this should be done with extreme caution because there's always a danger of precedent setting or claims that the city is acting arbitrarily, which we always want to be cautious of. Our process is robust. I think the specific property at issue was one of the 30 oldest.
Correct.
The NEAT team. So the question was, what could you do? You certainly have an option. Outside of that, I think that gets a little away from law, so I'm going to stop talking and I'll answer any question anybody has.
Questions for Lisa before Raleigh weighs in?
I have a question.
I don't have a whole lot extra to add. It is 1342 Walnut is the address. What I'll say is this for my,
I thought it was 1300 Maple. Oh, is it Walnut?
Yeah, it was Walnut. And this was a fire damaged property.
What was the address again?
1342 Walnut.
Okay.
Yeah, so 2014 was the original red tag date.
Maple, you'll see on the next
And
discussion.
I have a serious problem with that one because that was approved 2 years ago, year and a half ago for demo.
Oh, that was one of the three that we found.
1300 that just happened.
Oh,
It was one of the three.
Yeah.
that haven't been.
Good news that the next discussion item is 1300 West Maple's red tag was removed, but I don't want to jump the gun on that. So 1342, yes, to council members' cost, that was one of the legacy MSD orders that I inherited that unfortunately had not been torn down in the normal timeline, we'll say that much. And so this came up about 4 weeks ago, when we scheduled to do the environmental survey. We did it along with 1326 Jennison. And so we contacted the land bank, who manages all tax foreclosed properties prior to sale or pending sale at the upcoming auction in August. And that's when Treasurer Fox's office got involved and asked some questions. Generally, when properties get foreclosed on an annual basis, March 31st is the last day to pay. April 1, the county treasurer effectively takes ownership of those parcels. Usually sometime in May, so this year, May 9th, treasurer's office will reach out to all local governments. In our case, being the largest in his jurisdiction, we usually do a meeting and we review the foreclosures. So I believe this year, Lansing had in the 60 or so parcel range. We go over anything, and his office ultimately requests from EDP and assessing, and I think the treasury as well, any and everything that we need to know about the property that already hasn't been transferred to county tax already. And he wants to know that because they need to make the auction packet the most informative that it could be to try and capture all debts incurred, not only at the county level, but in that taxable year at the local unit level. So that, to your initial point, if it doesn't sell and those locals have to come back and then pay that debt back to the county, the treasurer works to make that as minimal as possible. So this is where 42 came up, and then we scheduled it or tried to schedule it, and the treasurer had asked us to stop to then allow, I think, this conversation to take place. I believe he reached out to you, reached out to myself and the mayor. Treasurer has a different opinion, doesn't think the home should be torn down. I've tried to share on multiple occasions that conversation has since passed at the city level. Again, 2 years ago, the city at that time brought forth a make safer demolition candidate. Ultimately, council did pass that order requiring it to be made safe or demolished. Since the owner didn't do so, it's now up to the city. My understanding is that is law, and it's my job to see that law through. And if I don't, there's bigger problems that need to be talked about at that point. So the conversation about how we suspend or stop that, I think to Law's point, yes, council has those powers. I do not. The administration does not. And so I'm the guy over here just trying to adhere to an order that should have been adhered to much sooner. Unfortunately, it had not. And so I've shared these concerns with the treasurer that I appreciate his understanding or his take on the situation in terms of their approach to save our housing stock. But unfortunately for this specific address in question, I feel that time has since passed, at least at the administrative level. If he can make a partnership with somebody on council or multiple of you, those are the legislative powers you hold that I do not. I'll leave it with this. I did encourage him and say perhaps waiting until May of that year is too long. And if you know of those pending foreclosures come January, our offices should be talking a lot sooner. And that's not for me to make a commitment that I will stop an MSD. It's that if there's anything else, if there is a possible MSD that hasn't even had a hearing, I think that's the appropriate time then for the administration and the treasurer's office to work on some sort of partnership. But if there's been a hearing or a hearing scheduled, let alone referred to council, let alone made its way through the process, I feel that time has since passed. I'll say this in terms of what their office has shared back. Their concern is we'll demo it. The vacant lot, in their opinion, is not buildable, and that they'll have to add that cost to demo to the auction packet in August, which will likely make it not valuable to somebody to want to buy a vacant lot for 30,000+. I'm guessing on what that total cost would be. So to his point, yes, if that doesn't sell, if we then as a local unit don't accept it in November when we're asked if we don't want to reject it, so we reject it, goes to the land bank and inevitably being generic. Yes, at some point in the coming weeks after that, when all the paperwork's done, the county treasurer will send a bill to the city of Lansing, along with anything else in the auction that he didn't collect the full debt at auction to the city. And that's just that's the rules on the book. I didn't create those, just trying to follow them.
Yeah, and the conversation started with the specific address and then open to the wider conversation. That occasionally this does happen. He stated 1 to 2 properties a year may fall into this particular situation. And
I'll add a second layer to that point on that is if we don't tear it down now, can we at least put a demo order that's on the auction? Perhaps. And I haven't vetted this out with law, haven't vetted this out with council either. Is this discussion point when that order has since, I call it expired, meaning you gave the property owner 60 days. They didn't make it safe or tear it down themselves. Now the administration has jurisdictional control to then do that demolition. And there's not a specific that immediately that next day. Certainly the department does what we can to be as expeditious as possible. And we're coming out of a legacy of doing the demo processes differently, to say it politely. So we're still getting better and better every day. But I don't know that I feel comfortable unless it's a property by property to give the treasurer that assurance that if something is foreclosed on with an MSD order also on it and has not yet torn it down, are we compliant or fine with allowing an order to be listed on the auction packet and then waiting to see if it sells with that set order? I could see a back and forth perhaps with council to say, why are we waiting 5 months? So again, that's to me a hypothetical world that I'm not certain I'm comfortable in, and I don't know how to discuss it unless we're talking about something specific, but I will say that was something else the treasurer's office requested as a possible meet in the middle.
comments? Sure.
I just want to go back to the Maple Street thing again. The email says that Alan Fox has reached out about rescinding a recently been voted through.
Yeah.
Property of Maple Street. So we're
That would
not
be, I think
'Cause-
that that could be my
Walnut certainly
error.
wasn't
Yeah,
recently voted through.
Yeah. that would be my error. I had Maple Street for some reason in the mix there, but I believe it was.
And to my knowledge, without having the foreclosure list in front of me, the only two parcels that were foreclosed on that have an active MSD is 1342 Walnut and 308 Cesar Chavez. Maple was a pending foreclosure, but they did pay their taxes.
They did pay their taxes. Okay, I see.
Yes.
Yes.
Do you know, how does their process differ? Are they using different metric? I mean, how are they determining that a building that we went through, we vetted very carefully, made it through this entire process, but and I don't know who they have on their staff that's making that determination, but how do they make that determination?
I don't know. That's a great question. I don't want to answer for him because I don't know, but I can say as much that on our end, that process is exhaustive on our end to make that determination. Likewise, when it even gets referred upwards.
Sometimes painfully exhausted, right? So that's why I guess I'm surprised that this even came to us as a concern.
Branching out in a level of friendship that I have with the treasurer, full admittance, I sit on the land bank's board as well, but anything can be saved with the right amount of money. And so I do know that sometimes that approach is brought in.
Yeah, but it's typically not, right? I saw the head nod. I mean,
I get it. And so I don't know if they're coming at it with that approach that, it can be saved with the right amount of money. Sure, anything can be, but the impending immediate safety concerns that the administration had and ultimately this body upheld, to me, is first and foremost. And so just to say $1 million can make something better, when? Because today and likely tomorrow, it's still a significant safety hazard for the city.
Curious, how far out could we potentially go? I'm asking Lisa this. There was some discussion that we could sit on it for 5 months, perhaps. I mean, when we make a make safe or demolish order and it's final, done, does the state law allow for the administration to play the waited out game as long as they choose?
I don't know that I have a robust answer to that off the top of my head, so I would appreciate an opportunity to look into it, get back to you.
Please, I would appreciate it just for clarification.
Yeah.
The next thing I would ask, if I may, when do we have a next demo board hearing? I have brought up several properties, I think, to you that are
Yes.
beyond repair. Do you not have a date yet? Set?
Scheduled one yesterday.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
When the next demo board?
Oh, okay.
So just for semantics sake, the next demolition hearing on our end will be Wednesday. I'm just getting my calendar open, July 9th, if that's a Wednesday. The first Wednesday, that's not the week of the 4th.
Okay, yeah, that would be the ninth.
It's not the 9th, yeah.
And are you going to be meeting at your building still?
We're looking to do the Neighborhood Empowerment Center. That's where Board and Planning Board, just a bit more accessible.
6:30 still?
5:30 start, and I can send you the draft of the initial 6 we're doing, but there may be a couple more if I can get another hearing officer.
Does it include any commercial properties that we've talked about?
I believe there is a property on Hazel that is in. that
Okay.
percentage.
Yeah, if we could see the draft, that'd be great. I've run out of things to say.
Okay, no more questions or discussion around item E, correct?
No.
Okay. Moving on to F, updates on the 30. Well, the sneak properties.
We hadn't gotten anything since March, so.
Thank you.
And so, mind if I jump in?
Please.
Yeah. And so my understanding also after talking with you, your expectation is this will be a quarterly?
Correct. Yeah.
And so we'll plan on that accordingly on our end. I'm not necessarily going to go through all of them. I'll maybe give some that jump out to me. Again, this is the 30 oldest. It actually includes on the back end additional ones because as some come off, I've kept them just so you can see for today's sake. But then we've added more on to still keep it with the 30 oldest. So you heard me say before, but I'll say it again now that we're formally on this. 1300 Maple was at that time back in February when we last shared this report with you, the oldest Red Tag property. And so that was successfully renovated. It did have an MSD order from this body, but all permits were approved and we were able to remove that tag on May 29th. Some additional ones that stick out to me that were removed, Sycamore kind of midway down was removed back in February, along with Walnut Street. If it's in yellow, if you didn't read the header, that means it's an active MSD, either in process, if not ruled already by council. So there's a handful, K North, Washington, and Cedar. K North and Washington, I'm not confident that those will have been complied with. And so we are planning on our end that we'll have to begin the demolition process this summer. However, South Cedar, they had a rough plumbing recently approved. And so we do expect full compliance after talking with the building safety office. Additional ones, I think last time we spoke, if I remember correctly, Councilmember was saying one of the items you had asked, is we had a handful of requests for inspections. We didn't have specifics on those. And so some of those that we're getting into, Regent, for example, first page, number 3, we've actually begun scheduling. So there's about, I count 6 or so on this list. On June 30th, code enforcement's looking to get inside the property. Reason for that is often we red tag, for example, Regent 2007, and then we monitor it after 90 days on there on out. We don't ever get in the home. And while the monitoring is important in an exterior position to determine if the home is further decayed or if there's been additional violations, it gets difficult if we don't regularly get in. And so we've made an agreement with the new code leadership that we're going to try on an annual basis. If we haven't been in a home that's long been red tag, we're going to make an effort on a 12-month basis to request that again, so we can further document deterioration if it occurs, to decide if there's additional enforcement action. And the additional enforcement action could be anything from a make safe or demolish request. It could be potential strategy with the law office on taking a property to court, or it could present itself where it's been red tag, condition hasn't decayed, it's neatly kept. Owner continues to pay the monitoring fees, but there's really not much else we can do on our end to force that compliance.
Looks like you have about 7 or 8 properties that you've requested to inspect.
So to gain access, you request, and then if you're not granted access, you get an administrative search.
Correct. Yep.
President Cost?
So 1342 says paused by Ingham County Treasurer.
I think the same as the chairperson, expecting the treasurer's office to be present today. So I thought we were going to have a little bit more robust discussion on that one specifically. Since they didn't attend, then my call tomorrow will be the Treasurer Fox office to inform them that we need access to do the environmental survey.
I'm familiar with that little neighborhood. It's just north, it's between the river, just north of Andy's Market off at Willow. And, you know, that's been a problem child house for some time. So I think the owner actually lives next door, which that house is, anyways.
Previous owner?
You correct, yeah.
The only other thing I'll leave on this, unless there's additional questions, is if you didn't hear, I'm not sure where you would have heard it, if not from me, but building safety was successful in hiring a permit enforcement officer. That was a new position last year. And that person started about 45 or so days. So there's a couple on here that now that we have that position filled, we're transferring some of the investigation on that address to that person. Because there's recent permits or anything within the last 6 months that have since expired before we strategize with code enforcement on getting inside the property. We're talking with the law office for further court action. We're going to give the permit enforcement officer a chance to follow up with those identified contractors. Again, see what we can find out. If anything, it builds our case file. If that doesn't pan out, should we need to take further legal action?
It was great that you have more help on that end. And I know this is putting you on the spot, but how are your staffing levels today? I mean, you know.
Which division?
So,
I'll give the 2 hot ones, right? Code enforcement, I am anxious. We just awarded a vacant code officer position to an internal candidate. They have since started about a week and a half ago. We completed a rigorous interview.
So does that mean they move from premise to code?
Yep.
Okay.
So now we have 2 premises.
Build one to create one. Okay. Got it.
I'm pending HR's approval on the other 2 code officer vacancies. I've submitted the department's desire to hire based on the candidates' interview scores and tests. So as soon as the HR specialist approves that and gets those offers out, we will have a full code enforcement team at that point.
Can you tell us when you submitted that?
I submitted my reply today. put them on the spot, but certainly there goes some time between interviews, waiting to hear, and
That was actually going to be my question, like
So
from
there's-
interview to submitting.
Right.
I'd be happy to maybe talk more offline of the
Yeah, yeah.
specifics of that
Right.
timeline.
I know it's putting you on the spot. I'm just
You
curious.
asked for a job shadow. That was late in the game, so that wasn't approved. And so we're going to add a job shadow component to the next time we post this position. And so it took a minute to get that answer fully vetted
Okay.
by all folks. So since I received that answer yesterday, that can't happen, we made a decision today at the department then to move. Premise, we have folks testing tomorrow and Friday. There's about, I'm told, about 8 or 9 testing for the 2 current vacant. And then come next fiscal year, we'll have that additional position that council passed for code enforcement division to add. So I'm confident, knock on wood, that those folks pass the test and premise, and that we'll have a good selection. But I'm really eager to see HR support us in the 2 that I sent over today, because we need it. Building said, you want me to keep going? I can keep going.
I'm curious, I'm looking at the list and I'm
Yes.
comparing it to the last one we have.
Sure.
And it looks like some of these red tag properties showed up on the new list that weren't on the previous list we had. Specifically 417 West Oakland Avenue.
Sure. So it's a tagging issue in our end with the BSNA merge. And how do I want to explain it? The way it's supposed to read is how you read it now, neat, unsafe. There was a filter that put the word unsafe first. Okay, and so we pulled the report, but good catch to the 2 leads in code for catching that the other day when this was requested on the agenda. So we've since made that change.
Any other comments or questions on the oldest neat properties?
Just one more, 1521 Rio Road, permit work is done, but refuses final inspection, likely coordination with OCA. What does that look like? Are we
Which one is
potentially
it?
getting it? It's 1521 Rio.
First page, kind of midway down, just below Washington.
Got it. Okay.
So before you look at Lisa, Lisa has not been informed of this. And so, nor has anyone in the
Surprise.
office, but, and I'm being read into this by my code leadership. There's quite a bit of history, I'm told, with this owner. There's a handful of safety letters. They did all the work, pulled all the permits, but for whatever reason, again, I've not spoken with this person, so hearsay, but for whatever reason, there's a refusal to allow the building safety office to come in and final out those permits. Furthermore, there's refusal for anything city government. And so since I was just read into this one, I've got to strategize, wrap my head around that, and certainly talk to Lisa and her counterparts to see how we seek compliance.
You can send the state government and he didn't say anything about the state government. Me and her.
We can go together.
Tag team it. Okay, I appreciate that explanation. I don't have any further questions.
Anything else?
I would just add a comment, and this is, I'm excited to see that there is some movement on a lot of these. I think that it's been this committee's aggressiveness with working with code compliance to get these moving rather than just, continuing to spiral out of control for years. So I promise I won't keep you much longer.
It's okay.
But I appreciate everyone in OCA for backing us up on this. It's good. It's good to see some dates and some things moving, because I can tell you, when we first started getting this list, it was like, oh my goodness, which is a very clean version of what really was just set in my head. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. These conversations, discussions, partnerships, working toward a common goal, obviously it's becoming effective. So
And to that end, I don't know if you heard public comment last night, but there was somebody that came and was incredibly concerned about 324 Hosmer Street.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it sounded like, there's some potential criminality component, but also potentially zoning violations.
I did hear from Vice President Carter last night, emailed, I believe the mayor's also spoken, perhaps some of you, the police chief specifically. I was read in this morning. From my end, a zoning letter has been sent out regarding the zoning violations in terms of the possible use of what they may be doing at that property. So that was done by our zoning office. We are in communication already and have been since May with the police department as well as the fire department on their shared concerns. And so I think we're Hopefully our zoning will certainly, I encourage that to bring compliance to, but if not, I'm happy to see that there are other necessary departments already involved with open investigations.
All right. Well, with no other business on the agenda, we are adjourned at 4:40 PM. Everyone?
I was just messing.
No, I'm so